So I'm back on the NA Miata for right now. I want to make a video of what I'm going to do to it because we built this whole car in like a couple weeks. And if you're a new subscriber, I highly suggest going back and checking out those videos because a lot of work went into this car in a really short amount of time. Basically brought it back from the dead because it was completely frame twisted on this side and sat in a field for a while. But we brought it back and we've just been trying to enjoy this car. It's basically in retirement because it used to be a drift car and then it hit the wall at Shannonville, and now it's basically in retirement. It's just kind of a really nice summer road trip car. And it's been great. I haven't had a single real issue with it. When I rebuilt it, I put a power steering rack on it and just looped the line. And ever since I did that, I've always kind of wanted to add power steering to it because the rack's already there. So I'd been looking forever. I priced out brand new parts, and it was just a ridiculous price for all brand new parts. And then at the time that we were rebuilding everything and putting that rack in, I couldn't find the rest of the power steering system or someone parting out one of these cars. And now, a few months later, I found everything. We kind of built a kit here of everything I should pretty much need. We have the bracket with all the bolts to bolt on the side of the block, the high pressure line, power steering pump and reservoir. And the only other thing I should need is the belt, which I don't have right now because it's Thanksgiving weekend, so I need to wait for CarQuest to open up to get the belt. And there's a bolt, a long bolt that goes through here to hold the pump to the bracket. It's just a nut and bolt basically, so I just need to go to Home Hardware or something and find that eventually. But for right now, I'm going to try to get this bracket on there and start mounting the pump. It's not a heavy car by any means, but now that it's just being driven for long distances and large amount of time, it'd just be nice to have power steering on it. The holes and threads are on the block, so it should just be a matter of just bolting that bracket on there and then bolting the pump to the bracket, and should be that easy. It's not always that easy, but should be that easy. In no way do you have to pull the whole air filter box out. I just chose to do it because it was only held in with like 2 bolts, and it just gives me more room. Plus I want to blow all this crap out of here. And then I was surprised there's actually a dent in the header. I don't know if that's from that crash or not, but I kind of want to just investigate that. Plus it's way more easier to get to these 3 bolt holes on the side of the block so I can bolt that bracket on. So yeah, it's just more room for me. Found a bolt that's almost long enough to go through the actual pump and mount the bottom of it. But I did find this one bolt in my bolt bin that is absolutely perfect. Like, I don't know what thread it is, but it threads in there absolutely perfectly. It's a 17 though, which is a little big, but I'll deal with that if I ever have to take the pump back off or whatever. It should fit in there. It shouldn't interfere with anything when it's tight. But that other bolt is literally the length from here to about the edge of here, and I need a little bit more so I can get a nut on it. That's going to slide in a little bit more once it's all tightened up, but I just need to go and take that one that's close to the right size and just get one a little bit longer with a nut and bolt, or with a bolt on the end of it. But I should be able to hang everything right now, and then worst comes to worst, I can slide it out of the way if I have to, but I should be able to just slide whatever nut and bolt I end up finding in there and just tightening it down all the way when I get the belt and everything. So I'm in a dilemma right now where this, since it's so short because of just being cut to loop that power steering line, I can rotate this in there, even though it's rusted in through here. I can rotate the whole line to get it out of the side of the steering rack, which is how I got this one out when it was seized, but the steering rack was out of the car. With everything in the car, there's no way I can really fold and twist this whole rack while tightening this down right now. So I need to try to get this separated in there. I try to heat it to break all the rust free in there, but I don't think it's going to go very well. And worst comes to worst, I buy the high pressure line, but I really don't have the money to buy a high pressure line, so that's why I'm trying to do this all as cheap as possible. Well, I'm glad I pulled out the air box now, because getting in there with a 17 mil wrench and all the rust and dealing with all this with that air box in the way, I definitely would have been pulling it out one way or another. I left it loose in there, which is nice because I can move this hose around and manipulate it to where I want it to be when the time comes to put the pump together. So that's what I'm going to do next, is install the pump and the reservoir and that return line, and then I'll just tighten that down when everything else is tight, and that'll be the last one that I tighten. That's about all I can do right now until I get a nut and bolt that's long enough to go all the way through there and out the other side. And then obviously the belt, which shouldn't be too bad. Hopefully I don't have to order it and wait a couple days, but it's just a belt. So the return line's on back there, the pressure line's on all the way. The reservoir's mounted mostly. The one bolt that's supposed to be under here is kind of twisted from back when we were pulling the frame out, but that 110 mil that I found, that's more than enough to hold this reservoir in there. And then I guess I'll probably pick up fluid when I get the belt, unless I can find some fluid around here. Shouldn't take too much. That's not a very big system, so. This fender from previous videos you see is completely full of body filler, like top to bottom. But the tire caught on it and bent what little metal is still in here down and broke it and so on. So I'm just going to hammer it back and just fender roll the whole thing. It's probably going to crack all this body filler out of it, but kind of hope it doesn't. Eventually I'll get another fender and another bumper for this car when we actually try to like clean it up real nice. But for right now, I just want to stop this from snagging the tire all the time. I was obviously going to use my fender roller, but it doesn't really fit in there for how ugly this thing is already. I don't really care that much, so I'll just rattle can that later. It'll be just as good. Professionally rolled. The reason I have it up in the air is the sway bar has been off since it's crashed, and this bar is just slightly bent compared to the other one. So I'm going to try to bend back the clean one, because obviously this one is not ideal. This is off the car that I cut in half. I wanted to sandblast and powder coat this one. Maybe I will someday, but right now this one's pretty clean and it really isn't that far off. So I'm just gonna bend this like ear back and try to put it back on this car. The other thing is I need to find the bolts that mount the actual bushings. If I can find enough bolts for those bushings and everything, sway bar link, or the sway bar is pretty easy to put back on. Urethane bushings and brackets, from one from this sway bar and one from the other sway bar that I have. And then these bolts are just placeholders. I only have 2 of them right now, so when I go to the parts store next, I'll grab 4 new ones. But it seems to line up pretty good. Everything's just placeholders just to make sure everything's gonna line up. But yeah, I just need to grab 2 nuts and bolts for the bottom of the sway bars, and then 4 bolts for bolting the bushings up to the frame rails. All right, so we're back. I think I have all the bolts I need and a belt. So hopefully this finishes it. I think that's it. I've already spilt the fluid, just putting fluid in, so I guess just run it and see what leaks. For a little bit, doesn't seem to be leaking. I ran it without a MAF, so I had to keep my foot on the accelerator to keep it running. But other than that, it seems to be perfectly fine. It's really weird feeling it with power steering now. So I'm gonna throw all the intake back on real quick, and then I guess I can road test it and see, double check the fluid level afterwards and see if it leaks and if everything's working as it should be. I think it should be fine. Doesn't look like anything's leaking so far, and you'd think it would leak right away. So one thing I decided to do real quick is I'm going to delete the stupid little canister off the bottom of the intake. This is just here to like get rid of sound for the intake. Basically air flows into it, it muffles it, and then you don't hear the intake as much. But it's just in the way, and I have a plug that fits right in there, so I'm just going to delete it. I have this that pretty much friction fits right in there. Spray a little bit of black paint in there and nobody will ever even know that it's a cap. Almost forgot about the PCV hose that's dried out and cracked. Ironically, we have this hose that's from the loop of the power steering rack that I took off, and it fits in there pretty much perfectly. So I'm gonna swap that out real quick, and then at least that's another thing fixed. Next thing I'm gonna do is this washer bottle and the motor. It was removed from the car when I got it, but I got the washer bottle with the car. I don't see why the motor wouldn't work. I have lines off of the hood that was crashed. I gotta find them, but I do have lines for it. So I'm gonna try to reinstall this, and I'm pretty sure this is the connector that's taped off down in there in the wire harness. So I just gotta pull that back out, hopefully plug it into the motor, mount the bottle, and just run the lines again. So I'm gonna try to do that while I'm here. I think that's most of my list. Sway bar's on, the power steering's obviously on, intake's back on. The one thing with that canister that I cut off though, that 10 mil mounting bolt is SOL now. So it's perfectly fine when you bolt everything together. That came out actually pretty decent in my opinion. Painted it black, wouldn't even really know that it's missing anything. Washer bottle's in, the pump is hooked back up. The lines are in. I didn't realize it ran through the firewall until I noticed there's a little hole there. So now all it's left is to basically test the washer fluid and then take it for a bit of a road test and let the air bleed out of the power steering system. Well, that didn't work very well. As soon as I closed it, this dried out one snapped in half. So I'm gonna try to pull it over top of it. There might be enough slack in there if I undo this. Again, I'll try that again. I had to heat it a bit to get it over. This is really dried out, so next time at the scrapyard, I'm gonna have to grab a whole bunch of washer fluid line. I knew it was dried out, but I didn't expect it to break as soon as I closed the hood, so try this again. This is like way easier. Feels like a normal car now, which is just absolutely amazing. I did all that for like under $100. I should have done it a long time ago. So yeah, there's a Miata video. I wasn't really planning on this, but I want to get this stuff done before the snow flies, and I managed to score that power steering pump for super cheap. We've been daily driving it all summer with no power steering, so at least it's one thing off the list. We have a proper washer bottle again, which is also super nice. Didn't really drive it in bad weather ever, but the fact that I had the washer bottle, it was nice to put that back. And the sway bar's been off since we crashed it because everything got bent. So I finally got around to actually putting that back on. But hopefully somebody enjoyed this video a little bit. The teeth, there's a lot of people who ask about the teeth. I don't really have a video on that. They're just 3D printed with LEDs in them. So I can, and they're just bolted into two holes that are in the crash bar. So I didn't really make a video on that, but this car is pretty much done for this season. We're gonna eventually park it in the next couple of weeks, but I figured we'll go for another good drive in it, and power steering would be nice. If you're new here and this is your first video, there is a lot of other cars that I work on. And yeah, just if you want to support me, like, subscribe, comments go a long way as well. And it'd be really great to get some support because we just lost my tripod. When I started the Miata, I clutch rolled forward like 2 inches and it was enough to run over the leg of my tripod. So get another one of those, and the next video is going to be the EG hatch. We got a windshield to put in it, hopefully this week. So pretty sure I've said that once already, but it is for sure happening in the next video. But yeah, Miata is ready for a little more daily driving before the fall is over.